Sophia is a beautiful red-haired girl with piercing blue eyes who stood in the middle of a crowd of dark-skinned foreign students, laughing happily as they told her things, and she could barely respond. Meanwhile, Sergio, who was in his 5th year of mathematical physics, stood apart and couldn't take his eyes off her, helplessly clenching his fists in a fit of rage. Sergio had liked Sophia for a long time, but she studied in the next building of the university, having chosen the Faculty of Foreign Languages, and was always surrounded by foreigners. Of course, thought Sergio, it is interesting for her with them. Look how she laughs, but what can I give her? Of course, Mom told me that our family of intellectuals was the 5th generation. My great-grandfather was a scientist and a professor. My grandfather was a famous architect. But what does that matter to me? Can I even talk to a girl like Sophia about that? Boast about my roots? She needs to hear something funny, something that makes her smile, and I, unfortunately, am a bore, one of those that are everywhere. Suddenly, he was perplexed. Sophia, pushing her way through the crowd of admirers, approached him and picked up the notebook that he had dropped, without even realizing it. "Is this yours?" She looked at him and smiled in such a way that Sergio felt an inexplicable warmth inside him. "Yes, thank you." He finally found an answer. "Today I feel so clumsy." "It happens sometimes," she nodded and walked away immediately. Since that day, Sergio could not sleep or eat. All that occupied his thoughts was Sophia, and he suffered horribly because he could no longer see her even from afar. Sergio could not imagine where she had disappeared to, and he did not want to ask anyone. And suddenly, he saw her in the student cafeteria where she was buying her lunch. Sergio decided not to waste any more time and hurried towards her. At that moment, she was taking money out of her purse to pay at the cash register, but he didn't allow her to do so. "I'm allowed to treat you to lunch," he smiled. "After all, you gave me back the notebook with the lectures that I needed so much, and thus saved me from exhausting work." Sophia looked at him and blushed for some reason, but then declined his offer. "I'm embarrassed. There's no need." "Come on, stop that." "Ha ha," Sergio laughed. "I'd love to take her to the most expensive restaurant, but I can only afford the university cafeteria. Don't take away my last drop of dignity." "Well, okay," Sophia said. "Pay if you want it that much." A minute later, he sat down at her table, and soon they were talking as if they had known each other forever. But when Sergio asked her out, she turned down his offer. "Thank you, of course, and I'm very flattered that you paid attention to me, but I'm not ready for a serious relationship. All my time is taken up with my studies. I've gotten used to it. Sorry." Sergio relented and reduced his pressure, but he didn't stop courting her. And after a year, Sophia agreed to be his wife. "She's too beautiful for you," Sergio's mother, Mrs. Natalia, said plaintively. "I keep a close eye on you. I know those women from the East. They cheat on their husbands right and left." "Mom, why do you say that?" Sergio was indignant. "Sophia isn't like that." "My God, how do you know? Is she like that or not?" "You see, when you start growing horns, then you'll dance. And don't complain. Don't say I didn't warn you. You'll scream." "I won't scream, Mom. I'll be the happiest man with her." "Yes, we'll see." The wedding was joyous, only Sergio frowned as he noticed how all the boys were staring at his bride. Jealousy crept into his heart like a black snake and never left him. Sophia laughed at her husband, caressing him. She promised to always love him. He would thaw, saying that he believed, and that he loved her very much too. But as soon as he saw his young wife talking to someone, or, worse yet, smiling at someone, he would light up again like a torch. Mrs. Natalia only added fuel to the fire and kept a close eye on her daughter-in-law, not allowing her to take a single step in peace. "Where are you going, dressed like that?" "To an interview," Sophia replied. "I want to offer my services as a translator." "So what?" Ha, Mrs. Natalia laughed. Are you supposed to go to interviews looking like this now? Aren't you embarrassed? Your blouse is about to burst and your skirt is sticking together. Mrs. Natalia, the blouse is my size. Also, I will wear a jacket over it. And the skirt is not tight, it is just strictly cut. As you can see, the length is quite decent, knee length. No, anyway, it was a mistake for my Sergio to marry you. You are just a flirt and nothing more. You only know how to twist your hips in front of men and show your chest. This is my size too. Even if I wanted to, no one would notice anyway, Sophia joked. But when she was alone with her husband, she would tell him, Sergio, I'm tired of your mother's constant criticism. It's a good thing she's not living with us yet. Otherwise, she would just go crazy. Sophia, Mom wishes us all the best, and she loves us very much. No, Sergio, she loves you, and she hates me with an intense passion. Sophia sighed. I just don't understand. What did I do to her? Nothing, calm down. Sergio hugged his wife. I'll talk to her. Sophia didn't know if he was talking to his mother or not. But every time Miss Natalia appeared, she kept sticking needles into her daughter-in-law and sometimes made her cry. She also didn't forget to put pressure on her son. Sergio, don't even think about having children now. Live with her first, at least, for 3 or 4 years. Watch how she breathes and then have children. And pay more attention, please, or you will create someone else's child as if it were your own, and you won't even realize it. Sergio listened to his mother's advice, and when one day Sophia spoke about the baby, he told her immediately, It's too early to talk about it. I don't want to. Everything has its time. Yes, and why rush? We are still young enough, we have plenty of time, so let's drop these conversations. Sophia only shrugged her shoulders in response, although she did not like Sergio's views on life. For some reason, she thought that children were a quite natural addition to a happy and loving family. But it turned out that her husband thought differently. Okay, so be it, she nodded. Maybe you're right. But fate decided otherwise. Less than half a year after the wedding, Sophia became pregnant, and it happened somehow naturally. She didn't take any special measures for it. She didn't adjust anything specifically. And even she herself was surprised at what had happened. But Sergio was furious. So you decided everything your way, right? Who gave you permission? You asked me? Yes, why are you shouting at me like that? Sophia burst out. Sergio, for a moment, if you have forgotten, we are married. And it turns out that children come from this. Or do you think that I am the only one to blame for this? I mean that we should make all decisions together. I had other plans. Yes, I didn't know it would turn out like this, Sophia cried. And I didn't know you would take the news of our baby so badly. All husbands who love their wives are happy to become parents. They shower the future mother with flowers, carry her around the room, hug her, kiss her. And you showered me with reproaches as if I had done something very wrong. If you don't want our baby and I'm not needed either, I'll leave right now and live only with your plans. Sergio, as if he had only now understood the meaning of his own complaints, stretched out his arms towards his wife and pulled her towards him. Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to offend you. It just all happened so unexpectedly, and also my mother. I don't want to hear anything about your mother right now, Sophia continued crying, and you have really hurt me a lot. Don't even think about saying that I should get rid of the baby to please you. No, I won't. Sorry, Sergio repeated again. He did everything he could to reconcile them, and he managed to convince his wife that he was very happy with the news of the baby. What he had said was simply the result of the SOC. After all, he could also be understood. He was not prepared for such a turn of events. Sophia believed her words, wiped away her tears, and smiled, even though she knew she would still have to face a battle with her mother-in-law. Sophia knew very well Mrs. Natalia's opinion that it was too early to be a grandmother. After all, she never tired of talking about it. However, to Sophia's surprise, Mrs. Natalia did not start pressuring her daughter-in-law and just shook her head. Well, well, we'll see. I hope she's strong enough to have at least one grandchild. Well, whatever happens, Sophia smiled at her mother-in-law, but I'll try. Yes, try, HM. Mrs. Natalia laughed. The months of pregnancy passed very quickly. The baby didn't bother Sophia at all, and she was sure that she would give birth to a healthy and strong child. The doctors had told her that it was a boy a long time ago, and even Mrs. Natalia, as it seemed to Sophia, began to be a little kinder to her. It all ended with the birth of the baby. The child was born dark-skinned and with dark hair, and this surprised Sophia very much. After all, she herself was fair-skinned and blonde. Sergio was also fair-skinned, so when she undressed the baby at home and he saw him up close, he moved away from the child instead of taking him in his arms. "What is this?" he asked, pointing at the baby with his finger. "Our son, Marco. I want him to be called that, don't you mind?" Sophia asked tenderly as she looked at the newborn. "No, no!" Sergio suddenly shouted. "This creature can't be my son. My mother told me that when you were born, I should take a DNA test to find out if I was raising my own child, but I can see at first glance that this has nothing to do with me. You cheated on me. You were unfaithful. You fathered him with another man and made fun of me, right?" "What are you saying?" Sophia exclaimed. "How can you say that? Marco is your son. I was never unfaithful to you. Look at my hair." Sergio continued without calming down. "Look at the color of my hair and my skin. And he is black." "He is not black. He is just dark," Sophia replied. "I don't want to hear anything," Sergio said stubbornly, pressing his lips together. Mrs. Natalia supported her son. "Well, that's what I thought." "Ha ha 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 ha!" She laughed mischievously as soon as she glanced at her grandson. "Whose is it?" "Some Moldovan or Caucasian. Or maybe a Turk or Latin American. Who are you translating for over there? My son told me that you especially enjoy working with representatives of African countries. And maybe you're not only working, but also having fun, huh? Thank God you didn't give birth to a dark-skinned child." "Oh, translator, it would have been better if Sergio had married a saleswoman." Sophia cradled her baby and went to her room, where she couldn't bear it and burst into tears, dropping tears on the blue blankets in which her son was wrapped. For several days, Sergio and Mrs. Natalia, who had temporarily moved in with her son, remained silent and did not speak to Sophia and did not want to listen to her explanations. The unfortunate woman could only hope that they would repent and understand that they were wrong. However, they had no intention of forgiving her. A week after the birth of his son, Sergio returned home drunk and immediately approached his wife. "I still want to know who the father of this one is. This one, I don't even know what to call him." "Son," Sophia cried. "You must call him son. I don't owe anyone anything, least of all you and him. And in general, take him and get out of here, both of you. I don't want to know anything about you. Sergio, let's do a DNA test. You'll see everything for yourself. I didn't cheat on you or betray you. I don't want any of that." She rejected her husband. "You killed my love for you. I don't want to know anything else." "And maybe there was no love?" Sophia asked sadly. Sergio did not answer. He simply went to his room and lay down on the bed. After a few minutes, Sophia heard his loud snoring. Then she came into the room with scissors in her hand and cut off a small lock of hair, which she put away in a clean bag. Then she moistened the tips of her husband's lips with a cotton swab and only then returned to the baby. The next day, Sophia handed over her samples and those of her husband and son for DNA testing. And a few days later, she triumphantly handed the test results to Sergio and Mrs. Natalia. "Look, here it is. We are Marco's parents. This is an official document that confirms my words." Sergio took the paper she handed him and read it carefully before handing it to his mother. She also read the contents of the document and laughed. I don't know how you did it, but personally, this doesn't prove anything to me. You only have to look at your son and mine to realize that they have no relationship with each other. Sergio became furious, snatched the paper from his mother's hands, tore it into small pieces, and threw it in his wife's face. "Go away," he told her, "and take Marco with you. Let the person you slept with behind my back raise him." "Sergio, it's almost dark outside," Sophia pleaded, "and it's cold. Where are you sending me with a newborn? I don't care. Come on, clear the apartment. Another girl will live here, an honest one, unlike you." "You'll regret this one day," Sophia said, "but it will be too late. Don't worry about it." Ha 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 ha, Mrs. Natalia laughed, pushing her daughter-in-law toward the door. Sophia left, hugging her little son. For several days, she wandered around the city, sleeping wherever she could. And finally, she arrived at the hospital gates because it seemed to her that the baby was not feeling well. In fact, Marco had a high fever, and Sophia could not find a place for herself until the doctors reassured her. It was nothing serious, but the child needs comfortable living conditions. "Listen," said the nurse, who was no longer young. "You mentioned that you have nowhere to live, and I have a younger brother. After the death of his wife, he lives alone and has been looking for a housekeeper for a long time. Victor is a businessman and spends a lot of time at work, but he doesn't like being at home because it is empty and lonely. I can talk to Eli if he agrees. You could live with Eli and work in the house, cook, clean, wash, in short, pure female functions. Yes, don't look at me like that. It's temporary until the child grows up a bit, and then you'll take him to kindergarten and find a job according to your profession, well, or whatever. Yes, don't worry. Victor is good, honest. He doesn't have any nonsense in his head after all. He's already over 50 years old. Well, I should call him." Call Sophia nodded, and in a few days she started her new responsibilities. A year passed. One night, Victor waited for Sophia to put Marco to sleep, and when she went out to serve dinner, he came over and touched her hand. "Wait, please, I want to talk to you. Sit down." Sophia obediently sat on a chair, and Victor sat next to her without letting go of her hand. "Just, please, don't say anything until you hear me out. Understand, Sophia, during this year, I have not only gotten used to you and Marco, but I sincerely love you. I have never been so eager to get home. I would like to spend as much time with you as possible. I don't want to let you go. Forgive my slurred speech. I feel like a child, but I can't help it. Sophia, I love you and I want to ask for your hand and your heart. I know I'm much older than you, but it's not critical for now. And what will come next, only God knows. But if you accept, I promise." Sophia reached out and touched his lips. "Victor. Victor, you don't need to say anything. I love you very much too. But I never thought you would pay attention to me. You won me over with your kindness and care. Nobody ever treated me like this. And we don't need anything from you for us and Marco. Just love us as much as you can, and we will do everything to make you happy. I knew from a young age that I wouldn't have children, and you have given me a son. Will you allow him to be my son? Look, we even look alike. I also have dark skin because I have gypsy blood in my veins. One of my great-grandmothers was a real gypsy." Sophia suddenly stood up. I just remembered. Mom told me that her grandfather, my great-grandfather, was also a gypsy. And I also had a brother called Nicholas, who died as a baby. But he was just as dark-skinned and dark-haired as Marco. How could I forget? You see? Victor smiled. We are of the same blood. And our destiny, Victor, will now be the same for both of us, said Sophia. You will never regret your decision, and I will do everything to make you happy. Sophia kept her word, and Victor was, in fact, truly happy with her. He adopted Marco as his own son, and the boy considered him his father, even though he knew his mother's story. When Marco grew up, Victor did everything he could to ensure that he had a good education. And then, together, they ran the family business. Over time, Victor retired from the business, and Marco became the head of the company. One day, Sophia went to her son's office to inform him about a trip. "Son, your father and I have changed the date of the trip. We are leaving early in the morning. Please apologize to Luciana and your grandchildren for not being able to say goodbye. But they are already waiting for us at the sanatorium. You know that places there fill up quickly." "Yes, Mum, of course. Don't worry. In a week, I will join you with my family. We can rest together for a couple of days. I have been dreaming of the sea for a long time, and Luciana will be happy, not to mention the children." By the way, she was thinking. She couldn't finish her thought when there was a knock at the door, and a corpulent older woman in a worn dress appeared. Behind her came a thin, unshaven man of indeterminate age. "I want to see the director," the stranger declared. "I want justice. Why did they leave my son without a bonus? Yes, he spent a lot of time in the hospital. He has a simple job. But that doesn't mean you can treat him like that." "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about," Marco said, while Sophia quickly turned to the window. "I'm talking about the payments owed to my son," the woman exclaimed. "And you, as the director, have no right to deny them." "I don't think you have the right to enter my son's office and shout at him," Sophia said calmly, turning around from the window. "Or do you think otherwise, Mrs. Natalia?" "Mom, do you know us?" Marco was surprised. "Yes, son, you know these people too, although they didn't need us. Pay them, Marco, and let them go." Sergio came forward. "Marco," he asked, "so you are my son, Sophia?" "I have the right to. You lost all rights to our son many years ago." Sophia scoffed. "And don't blame me for that. And now excuse me, I want to speak to my son alone." Marco looked at his mother, then picked up the phone and gave a brief order to the accountant. "Go away," he said to Sergio and Mrs. Natalia. "We will pay you everything you are owed, but please don't bother us any more in the future." They're used to it, aren't they? Sergio and his mother, bowing their heads, left the office. Sophia approached her son and hugged him. "Don't worry, son. This is past and gone forever." "Yes, Mom," Marco replied, "and I'm very happy about that. But don't say anything to Dad. I don't want him to feel bad. By the way, are you happy that we'll soon join you?" "Yes, I'm very happy. And I'm very happy too, Mom. I'm very, very happy."